Hey guys, it's Omar Spahi, here for another episode of the Dreamer Comics podcast. We're here live at Comic-Con Revolution, and we're here joined with comic book survivor, Image co-founder, and Bishop creator, Whilce Portacio.
Hey guys.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
So when you were growing up, what comics were you into growing up? Like, what got you into comic books? Like, what was the genre, what was the style, or who are your inspirations?
I was a child growing up in the 60s, okay? So I was watching the Apollo launchings and stuff. And so I was going to be an astronaut, okay?
Oh, wow.
Now, even back then, though they didn't have the internet, I always did my research. And I found out that you can't be 5 foot short guy. Because those ejector pods are made only one, the measurements are only, one mold.
Yeah.
And from the knees down to the floor, my feet couldn't touch the floor. So if I got ejected out, my kneecaps popped.
Wow.
And that alone would disqualify me to be an astronaut. So I go, And then I go, okay. My dad actually worked at this university for a little while, and one of the deans there said, hey, here's some science fiction novels that your kid read. And so they were great stuff. They were some of the old classic stuff. And I started devouring those. And then that's when I got into this world of imagination. In science fiction, you do anything and everything, but what's great, because it's based on science, it's based on real stuff.
Of course.
How
far can you push it? How much?
Yeah, exactly. There are rules, there are boundaries, but you can push those if you know what the rules are and stuff. So that got me really excited to do these great big worlds, because then I got into film, and film is great with storytelling and stuff, but especially back then, even though we had like the Scorsese's and the Akira Kurosawa's and the David Leans, my favorites, they couldn't really get that far into that open box, or into those places that we've not yet explored. It was too expensive.
Yeah, they had budget restrictions for everything.
They had budget restrictions, so you always had to write down. And when I first got into comics, anytime we were thinking about doing a film, we always were thinking about writing down.
Yeah.
Where our place has always been these big worlds that nobody can do. Now Hollywood can do all those things, but science fiction got me started thinking about that. And I couldn't become an astronaut. I was too young to get into film. I wasn't in film school yet, although I really wanted to go in, but I could draw. That was free. Not free, but how much for a pencil and how much for a piece of paper. And now I have an open paper, open ideas in my head, and I can go anywhere now. And I had a lot of success personal on my own developing my art style, because I had, believe it or not, in 6th grade, there was an art teacher, and she took me by the hand, and every school I went to after that, next art teacher, they knew about me, and they knew what to do with me. So much so, by the time I was in high school in Hawaii, my 2nd year, my art teacher had put me into the senior art class.
Oh, wow.
And then by the end of that, he had set up with the University of Hawaii so that I could take classes at the university, because he said there was nothing he could do for me for third and fourth year. So I now could draw those worlds, but I really wanted to get into film. I really wanted to be a Kurosawa and lean, but I couldn't. And then somebody said, hey, there's San Diego Con. Why don't you try to do some drawings? And so I did. I took those novels that I read, like The Hobbit and stuff, and Dune, and I envisioned them. I designed the sets, I designed the props, I casted it, and then slowly started to learn how to tell a story, and then got into comics, and wow, they actually now paid me for it. And I'd originally gone in going, okay, I'll go a little ways with this, refine my storytelling, and then go to the film school, right? Yeah. But Punisher led to X-Men, led to Image, and then now what we got now, and I haven't been able to get out since.
How did you get started with Punisher? How did you go to Comic-Con and just start showing people pages, or what was the process to get it? Because Punisher was your first work.
I'm very lucky. In my whole life, I've been incredibly lucky in all avenues. My dad retired from the Navy, so we went back to the Philippines. We lived there for about 4 years. I came out of high school there, and okay, I got to do something, all right? And I was a straight A student, Asian family. I got to be a doctor. I got to be a lawyer. But I want to do art. And they go, okay, we'll give you one shot. So I go back to San Diego, go back to the stateside, to San Diego where my aunt was, and I start doing a portfolio. I did the whole Hobbit cast and did all these pieces. And then my cousin goes, hey, there's San Diego Comic-Con happening. And he he dragged me over there, pulling my portfolio. I was lucky. That was the year Marvel sent every single editor to San Diego, specifically looking for new talent.
Oh, wow. And
that was it.
That was it. And then from there, you just went and said, okay, here, now you're on the Punisher and you're off and running.
Yep.
And what was it like working at Marvel? Like, you started there and you worked on so many titles over the years. What was it like, because you worked on the Punisher, you've worked on X-Men, you've worked on X-Force.
Right. It's interesting with my perspective now, and then now seeing everything. One thing you got to remember, to put it in context, when I was doing those books, okay, when I got into the X office, and so I did almost every X book. What I really did there was I was enamored by the original team, Gene, Scott, Bobby, and Hank. And anytime they got shifted to another book, I always request to go on that book.
Yeah.
Okay, which is why when we did the big X-Men thing with the two teams, Jim took all these new characters. I stayed with Scott.
Yeah.
Okay, but one thing about it was, even though at the very tail end when we did the split of the X-Men books, then industry was getting big, and the collectors started getting into it. Okay, and that's what led straight into here. Well, Image, and then here. But all that period in between, before that, we were the industry that was just doing okay. But let me put it this way: Marvel would print out checks with Spider-Mans on them. Okay, like 100 Spider-Mans.
Okay.
And what was worse was the Christmas checks, because there's Spider-Man with that Santa hat.
Okay.
And so I would take it to the bank as a young 20, cool kid, or thought so. And I'd go to the prettiest bank teller to cash my nice monthly check. And she would not even blink an eye, not even, notice I was even there. Just, and that was it.
Attention, Comic-Con Revolution attendees. It is 5 o'clock and Comic-Con Revolution is closed. Thank you all so much for making year 2 an amazing show. Hope to see you again next year.
Yeah, so then you go to now, and I go to that bank with that Spider-Man check, and now the teller wants to introduce me to the manager. The manager wants tickets to San Diego.
It's changed so much.
It's changed so much. So my point there was that there weren't that many eyes on us back then. Now there's eyes everywhere on every little thing. So back then you can have a situation where Jim and I were on the two big X books, and Bob Harris, the editor, and all three of us, we were in sync in where we wanted to go with the X-Men. Jim and I basically really did all that on our own, with Bob guiding and Bob approving, but we were carte blanche to do whatever we wanted. And if you look through that, that's a bit of comic history. You look at the Dark Knights and the Watchmens and stuff.
Yeah.
Imagine scraggly Frank Miller walking to the office and says, "Hey, what about a psychotic middle-aged Sean Connery as Batman?"
You're not going to get a yes now.
Yeah, but see, back then there weren't that many eyes on us, so Frank can't hurt us.
Yeah.
And we're kind of in a slump right now, so let's take a shot. Now, imagine today, you know, with trademarks and everything, and you know, like Superman, that curly, you got to have that. You can't change it at all.
Yeah.
Because that trademark is worth so much.
Yep.
So back then was freedom.
Yeah. You can do whatever you wanted.
We did all our covers, even if there were variants, we did all our covers. We did all the interiors. We designed our own characters. We set up our own stories. We did everything. Like, I'm known for like 2 covers where Storm is crying in the rain and Storm is kissing Forge. Okay. If you look at all the other covers back then, what do you see? Big guns in action, right? The only way those 2 covers got approved was because those cover ideas were my editor's ideas, Suzanne Gaffney. It was her idea. She was the one who brought it back to us that Chris had set up a relationship with Storm and Forge, and so let's revisit that.
Yeah.
And it turned out she was right. The audience wanted to see that stuff. Yeah. But see, again, that freedom
to do
that was so exhilarating. Nowadays, you know, I understand. I mean, it's business. And, you know, that was one of our fallacies, and that was one of our, you know, I have to admit it, you know, big problems with Image. We didn't understand business at that. We understood our industry. We understood our fans, our market. But we didn't understand business because we were just noobs there. But, you know, you could take things too much, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
So let's back up for a second. How did you come to meet Jim Lee? When did you first meet Jim?
That's the, you know, it's funny because, I'll preface it by saying, but it's funny because everybody, when I do interviews, they always are like searching for that, okay, I'm Asian, so obviously there's these barriers and stuff, right? Well, the industry is so small. Oh, you can do it. Oh, great. You know, if you were a purple people eater, but you could draw the pages, they'll let you in.
Yeah.
But I did have a little bit of that. It's when, because Carl Potts was the guy who discovered me. He was the Punisher editor at the time. Well, he discovered me in San Diego, and then he discovered Jim in St. Louis, in Missouri. And but actually, about the same time, I think it was just a week apart.
Oh wow!
Because remember, I said that year they were sending the editors around.
On the hunt for the good stuff.
Yeah. So then Jim made the move to go to college in Berkeley. So now he was in California. So Carl calls me up and he goes, "Hey, you got to meet this new guy, Jim, and he's Asian. You guys will get along." And you know, we did get along. I mean, you know, I called up Jim. Well, I think I called up Jim, and then we talked for a little bit on the phone. And then he was thinking about, you know, getting closer to other professionals. Yeah. And there were a lot of professionals in San Diego at the time because of San Diego Con. And so Scott Williams and I convinced him to move down to San Diego, and we formed our first little studio in a one-bedroom apartment in a 2-bedroom, and then we did Homage, and then we did Whilce.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and so it was just, you know, we're the Asian, and Scott was like the token Asian because he was from Hawaii.
I love it. That's fun. So what got you to start when Image? Tell me the story of how you got involved with Image.
Oh, it's so boring. It's so boring, and I have nothing to do with anything. Every year, at that time, every year around Christmas, for a month, I would go home to the Philippines. Okay, that was my roots period. I was raised here in the States, so I didn't know the language, didn't know anything about the culture or anything, but here I have the means now because of comics, and so I'm gonna go every year. Plus, there was, you know, someone special that I met, so you know that's the real reason. If anybody travels far. Yeah. But anyway, so I started going back to the Philippines, and so right before I left that year, Jim calls me up and he goes, "Hey, Whilce, we're gonna do something. There's gonna be something real big. There's a couple, you know, big people to do it, and it's gonna be pretty cool." I go, "What is it?" "Oh, I can't tell you it, but when you come back, I'll tell you." I go, "Okay, I'm going on vacation. I don't have to think about this. Okay, there's nothing to think about anyways." I go off for a month. Then I come back. Jim calls me up and goes, "Hey, we did it." "What?" And then he tells me, and then I go, that sounds kind of interesting. I'm young and dumb, and you know, I've had. I mean, we've already done the X-Books. Yeah. So we were already at that point top of the food chain. You know, and again, I keep saying we were, you know, young and dumb, so that if it fails, who cares?
You can always go back to being a top creator, and they're going to hire you back.
Yeah. And at the time, animation was really starting up, special effects, concept design, and stuff. So even if Marvel or DC didn't want us, I was so young that, and I wasn't attached in any way, so I could move. So I go, okay, it might be exciting, and I said, okay, go on board, and then I met everybody, and so I actually met everybody then, and I guess I was like the last partner that they all just wanted to bring in.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And so the seven of you met where did you guys meet for the first time?
I think it was, again, it's so long ago. I think it was in Seattle. Todd was in Seattle. His I forget if it was his cousin or something, but he had a comic book store.
Okay.
And so we all went up. It seemed like the place to meet up, because some of us were in LA, some of us in San Diego. And so we all went up there to Todd's house and spent the weekend with him and stuff.
That's awesome. And then after that, you started working for a lot of different Image books over the years.
Yeah, that was one of the, again, that was back then. It was like, hey, Todd, I'm going to launch my book. I need something. And it was that simple. It was that easy. I mean, a lot of people don't know also is that, we have a lot to credit Wizard Magazine for, because they became our de facto voice. People didn't know that. We weekly called each other up. They needed content, we needed advertising. And in between books, the kids were more used to it back then, the 30-day in between.
Yeah.
But by having Wizard
in the middle, so
they
can get pumped up for the stuff that's coming out.
Right, and if we know we're going to have some roadblocks, hey, let's do a contest to visit the studio.
And then people are going to be super excited, and they can't wait for the next one. And I'm going to have a chance to visit the studio.
And we can now launch everything through there. Everybody will be ready when the product is ready. So there was a lot of interaction between everybody back then. Now again, because everything is worth so much potentially, everybody, and it's human nature wants to have most of that to themselves. But I grew up reading Stan and Jack's comics in the 60s, and Stan's soapbox of talking about the Mary Marvel bullpen that never existed.
Yeah.
But I imagine this big room with Jack and Big John and JR, everybody, all the big guys drawing together and laughing and teasing each other. And coming to the industry, and Carl tells me, sorry.
That's not really how it works.
John Romita Sr.'s over there, but he's art directing the interns and stuff. And so my first chance to get into the studio situation, when Carl asked me to call up Jim, and then Scott was already with me, and then to hear that, Rob was doing the same thing, and Todd was going to do the same thing, and Mark. And that was actually what led to then Homage. I don't know if you remember, before Wildstorm, it was a partnership between Homage, Jim, Scott, and I, and Mark Silvestri.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we were all in San Diego in this one big building, which was, again, so cool.
Yeah, to have that camaraderie and to have that whole everyone there. And
we had this open bullpen where we had just little walls, but just 3 feet, 4 feet, right? And so here I am drawing, and just 15 feet away is Mark Silvestri. And we all had BB guns, disc guns under our desk. So if I can catch him, not where, and then that would start
a whole war.
And we worked 24 hours. So all the professional doctors and stuff, they were gone by like 5 or 7. And so I even have it on videotape. I have some videotape.
Oh, I'd love to find this.
Going through the whole building down into the garage with BB guns, disc guns, and then Wizard gave us these nicely carved looking old-fashioned guns, but they were rubber band guns.
Oh yeah,
but they were real, and you could stack like 20 rubber bands on them so they could hurt. But then we had ping pong tables, and then when we went to Wildstorm, everybody had their PlayStation or something, and so on the intercom, hey, Street Fighter. Everyone is over there and stuff. So it was a great environment. You had, you could be bored or trying to wake up in the morning with your cup of coffee and walking around, and you see, oh, look at what the new guy's doing. Wow, that's kind of interesting, those kind of lines. Let me try those. Travis, what you're thinking behind that? Young little Travis. Sure, we could just, and then we knew he was doing the same thing, looking at and seeing what our techniques are. And so back then, you see this huge, fast rise of people talent because we were
all together and developing together and learning from each other and picking up the little tips and tricks to make different styles work.
Yeah.
And that's so cool. Now, how did you go and how did you keep that passion alive over the years to keep going and wanting to develop new talent? Because I think that's something you're so great at.
It's really my kids. I'm fortunate. All three of my kids can draw. My 18-year-old is a wonderful watercolor painter. And Jill Thompson, I have to thank you for that. I would bring them as kids to the convention, but see, I'm just dad.
Yeah.
So they would hang out with Jill, and they were watching Jill, and her techniques and what kind of brushes, what kind of paint and stuff. And so now he's a real good painter. He has a better concept eye than I do. He's in AP art, and his composition stuff are amazing. And he also shares with me, we're both science geeks. Mm-hmm. So thank the Lord. He's going in September. He's graduating. He just graduated. Just went to prom last night. He's graduating this year, and in September he's going to UC Santa Cruz because he wants to be an astrophysicist.
Oh wow! Really
either get into research or become Neil deGrasse Tyson and illustrate learning physics.
That's so cool, and that's an amazing process. It's living really through you because it's the same thing you wanted to be an astronaut. It kind of comes full circle.
Yeah,
and that's amazing.
Yeah, and my little girl, my 14-year-old, she's now assistant manager in her theater tech groups, and so they're all into art. So it was interesting for me because as a parent, you would like maybe if your kids kind of followed in what you wanted, what you did. And I must have done something right that they did actually get at least interested in art.
Yeah.
And so it was really interesting. So that, for me, that kind of like carried from, that high I got from like discovering a young lineal you and training him into who he is, who he would become today and other people. That kind of high of being able to foresee where someone is going to go and then getting to there and then letting them. And then them being able to take themselves off from there. And then now my kids come and they start getting interested in art and start taking it to where I wouldn't have taken it on their own direction and stuff. It's really, for me, it's a high, other than drawing itself, because I've always loved drawing, being able to see somebody else do stuff. Like all the interns that we had in Whilce are great. Watching Campbell, Travis, Ali Bermejo, everybody, it's just really cool watching them go. So it's really just everybody else just seeing, because even though back then was a big renaissance, was when Jim and I came in and with Todd and we started this big renaissance. It's a lot more eclectic now even. Yeah. There's so many different styles and people really experimenting. So I mean, you got to remember back then when we did it, it was so very few people that wanted to get into it. And do it.
There's a lot.
But see, you got to also remember, like when Neil Adams came in, he was from the illustration world. And illustration, what's that? And then so what he brought into comics, we were going, whoa, maybe we could apply this. And so everybody started to experiment. I remember when Bill Sienkiewicz came into the industry, and it was, he was like emotion explosions on the page. Okay, it's not really a specific clean technique.
No, it's definitely.
It's getting the emotion across with whatever tool you can. I was there. Everybody would turn their pages over and get out that rusty nail or that cotton swab and try to make these effects and stuff like that.
Try to copy because they saw greatness and the emotion was getting to them. They were getting an emotional reaction from it.
But see, that's how small the industry was, that somebody could have some experience in one other medium, bring it in, and then spark this infusion of variation and something new. Now, there's just so many different styles and different things, and you know, all the other industries have grown up. Like, you know, when I first got in, concept design was really not, you know, it was more technical than anything. It was draftsmen really at the time. Now they're artists on their own, and they're now digital painters too on their own, and so all the influence coming in, and everybody wanting to switch pawns and stuff. So there's a lot of creativity happening right now. It's just what's really interesting. Here's a little tidbit that just struck me a couple days ago. Even though back then, like I said, there weren't that many eyes on us because we weren't that successful, and now all the eyes are on us.
Yeah.
Well, if you actually look at the publishing numbers, our X-Men's average 400,000.
Wow, that's crazy.
A month.
That's like, it's unheard of in today's comic book.
You know what the cancellation number was? 125.
That's just crazy, because I mean, even the top selling books right now are around 125.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the market has changed so much.
It's changed so much. People don't remember. So like when I first got in, Carl Potts had this thing called Double Vision. It basically was a story that they didn't do, and they would give it to everybody new as a tryout to see if you can really tell a story.
Yeah.
But the caveat was you have to do it in 8 pages. You have to take a 20-page story and do it in 8 pages.
Oh, wow.
That's tough. So if you can get through that,
You can get through
you're
anything.
ready. Yeah.
You can get through anything. You got to make it work.
Now, here's the other side to that, because, okay, you can tell a story, but you're kind of slow. Okay, so you got to have both. You got to tell a story and you got to hit that deadline. Okay, but we don't want to let you go. So everybody, the industry doing so well already, everybody had a story. You know, like Chris Claremont had this other idea, and so he would write it out. And then we go, we'll hold it, put it in hold, it's approved, and we'll try to figure out where we can drop it, you know? And that was also fail-safe. If we have a problem with a deadline, we can just drop this in there, right?
You're good to go.
Yeah. So Carl goes, hey, you need to make some money. Hey, here's the story, and I can pay you at least $45. I could get paid something and do something really professional on a real deadline, even though it wasn't a published deadline, but he treated it as a real deadline.
Yeah.
So I get some real experience, as opposed to now where there isn't that extra money running around inside the system.
No, there's not. Everything's very tight.
So now, as a young artist, you have to be 100%. We cannot accept you unless you're 100%. Because again, a week delay in a deadline, that's what, a couple $100,000 or so? You know, so we can't afford that. You have to be tested out before you can join the ranks now. But back then, you could get eased in. You know, I sound like an old guy. I am an old guy, but that was the real difference back then. There was a lot more freedom back then.
Of course, you had a lot more freedom, a lot more ability to experiment, to try new things. And so, where did the idea for What Works come from? Because you're the one who created What Works. Where did that come from?
Well, I'm a military brat. My dad was in the Navy. Before my dad retired. Before my dad retired, I spent 4 years in Hawaii, and before that, 4 years in a place called Midway Island, which is at the very, very far western tip of the Hawaiian Islands. Okay, it's 1 mile by 2 mile island. Had a big battle there in World War II, and a big naval barrage battle, and so 1/8 of the island was cement, and that's where the housing was, that's where the exchange was and stuff, and the rest of it was forest restricted area.
Yeah.
But I was a preteen.
Yeah, so you wanted to get in trouble.
Yeah. So that whole area was our kingdom,
of course,
to explore. In fact, to get in my club, you had to dig around all over an island, and if you found your own bayonet shovel, you could join my team. But that's where I started playing, because I mean, seriously, you could walk a mile into the forest, and there's a pillbox. I mean, a full pristine pillbox. that didn't get hit at the time, and they just left it out there.
Wow.
There were big, huge artillery installation things. There were warehouses full of stuff. There were empty ammo shell casings this big and stuff. I mean, so as a little kid, you could imagine yourself in
that world, and all using all that stuff that's around you, and
Yeah.
experimenting with it and having fun with it. And
So all my fantasies as a little bratty kid was developed there. And then so when it came time to image, where okay, we're going to do this, and oh no, we've got to actually create something first before we draw it. You know, this is our own stuff. This is not, we're not working for somebody like Marvel.
Yeah.
And so of course, we were all practical enough. Okay, do what you're always told as a writer, right?
Yeah.
Do what you know. And that's what I knew. I knew military guys. And then Brandon Choi, who wrote both Wildcats and Wetworks, we lucked out because he was in San Diego, other than being Jim's best friend, he was in San Diego because he was trying out for the SEALs. But he, I think, sprained his ankle on the course. And so was thinking about what to do, whether go back into law or join up with us. And it turns out obviously he was going to join he wanted to be a Navy SEAL. So we got together and hit it off real well. And he then brought into the mix, classic monsters, the copyright's up. It's free now. It's open. We can use it. And so, cool. We needed an enemy.
So you got it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Now, what was the process like for you when you were going for and creating new stories, and you were working on Spawn? How did you come to work on Spawn?
It was a week before my contract with DC was up. Okay, I was contracted with DC for a little while and did some Batman and Supermans.
Mm-hmm.
And then a week before it was up, it was that weird period where it was going to be a week up, and so I couldn't take a new job, and they didn't really have a new job, and so I was going to hang around for a week. So I asked Dave if I could, help out with the contract a week early, and he said yes. That next day, I was a guest at Arizona, Phoenix Con,
Mm-hmm.
and as I'm checking in, tap, 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 turn around, it's Todd McFarlane. And it turns out my old partner in crime, because I published some books with Image before that with Brian Haberlin, he was Todd's editor at the time. And so it was Brian's idea to get me into the mix because Todd wanted to revamp again. And so I go, cool, a great way to ease me back into Image.
Yeah.
And hey, the Spawn world, that's my playground.
Yeah.
So it was an easy decision after Todd said so. Asked. And on top of that, I finally got to know Todd enough by that time that I knew, like everybody that really knows Todd. Todd can be rambunctious, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
but he is one of the most loyal people ever.
Yeah.
I mean, I was already a diabetic at that point. Okay. And so even at DC, which has, Time Warner health insurance, that was the point in time, people don't remember with the, I don't want to go into politics, but before, the ACA, I had top insurance because of the group.
Yep.
But every month I had to pay extra, and it kept rising because the costs were just so, it was so horrible back then, and so DC was only, I think if I remember right, DC was paying only half, and so I was paying the other, and it just kept rising. So that was one of the other reasons why I opted out of the contract. So then when I went to Todd, I told Todd, and Todd goes, no problem, and he paid in full, even the rises.
Wow, that's amazing. That kind of loyalty, and just taking care of people like that, and is something that's so cool, and a lot of people wouldn't do that, but that just shows.
Yeah, and so you could see how, when you talk to Greg Capullo, he's totally devoted to Todd.
Yeah.
And you could see why, and I understand now why.
Yeah. There's that, he builds that loyalty, it's a loyalty that.
Yeah, look at all his people. They're all oldies.
Yeah.
And, they've been there from the beginning. Yeah.
That's cool that he has that loyalty that he's built. So I have one last question for you. What advice do you have for any aspiring creators, artists, writer, penciler, inker, colorist? What advice would you give to them to make it in comics?
I say get out there. I've been teaching people a lot, and one of my mantras has always been get your work out there. And I say, and some people have a problem with it, but I say, even if they pay you $1, if they can guarantee you that they're going to publish, or if you've seen some of the books, they are publishing, not have published it, but are publishing, then even do it for $1. Because exposure is everything in the creative world, whether it's music or dance or theater or film or whatever. Even comics is the same. You get your work out there, and if you're good enough, if there's an audience out there waiting for your stuff, another editor will find out you're being paid $1.
Yep.
And
He'll come after you and try to get it.
Right. And even if he goes at, say, 50 and you jump at it, another editor will figure out that he paid you 50.
And he's coming ready for 100.
And you will, if you're talented, if you got it, you will get there. But you won't get there if you're not exposed, if you don't get that exposure. So for today, with what you got with the internet, and especially all those free social tools out there, if I was a kid today, I would draw a story. I would start a story and start characters, and I would put it out there every week or every month or whatever I'm capable of, for free.
Yep.
I would just get total exposure, because there is the chance, and there's been the oddball instances of, a producer or somebody seeing that and going, oh, cool, these guys aren't attached to somebody, so I don't have to deal with lawyers.
Yeah.
I can just deal with this guy straight if I can get to him. And even if you don't get to that, then you have the possibility, which it happens all the time now, in building your own audience.
Which is so important.
Yeah.
Because
Look at most of the people in Artist Alley.
Yeah.
They're indie guys who not even got them print yet.
Yeah.
They just built their own audience, and their own audience is loyal to them. And then when they get enough material that they've done for free for these guys, then they do a Kickstarter, and their community funds their Kickstarter. And now they can publish, and who's going to buy that stuff? Their audience.
Yep.
And they'll proselytize for them and get more audience.
Yep. And build that community and help getting all your projects made. And any idea you have, you can go and make it happen now.
And then again, the other thing about getting your stuff out there on the internet, because it'll stay there forever, right? Again, more time to get those eyes that you want to actually see your product, as opposed to if you in the regular pipeline, you gotta guarantee 5,000 copies or something, 3,000 copies or something.
Yeah, through
Who has that money
to go
and for your stuff to get on the stands for 2 days?
Yep. Doesn't make sense. So it's tough. You have to go out there and build your audience. So you know that if you're going to work for another company, your name will actually have some value. People will actually come out and pick your stuff up if they meet you at a convention. Like here we were at Comic-Con Revolution here, and if you come here and you get a chance to meet people, and it goes a long way. You build up a lot of good faith, and it's a grassroots thing. If you meet 10 people this weekend, and then all of a sudden next time you have a book, those 10 people go and buy your book. That makes a huge difference for sales and helps you really develop into all that.
And one of the other big things, and something that Jim and I especially took notice of, because we had what we called we had an assistant. We were the first team to have an assistant in the studio. Okay, he's a guy by the name of Carl Altstetter.
I know.
He actually went on to help me create Bishop. He's the actual co-creator on Bishop with me, and now, as you know, he's a Mattel toy designer, right? Okay, but back then he was just our assistant. He was our link to the audience, and he was of the age at that time. So if Jim and I did a new costume or something, Carl,
what do you think of this?
Carl goes, okay, back to the drawing board. If Carl really liked it, or especially if Carl had a suggestion to add to it, we would do it. So what's great about the internet, and it's especially good for starting indie guys, because again, you may have a good idea, but you got to learn the profession. You got to learn the tools of the trade. If you listen to your audience that you're building, they'll help you get along the way. If you bring in a side character that you think you want a character for this reason, and then you put that character in there and nobody's noticing him, guess what? Take the cue.
Yeah.
Start to write them out.
Yeah.
And bring in another person to try to fit that role. If that character catches,
Then you're on to something.
then you're on to. So you're letting them, your audience, build your world for you. And even if you don't get successful, you'll just grow your audience. And you get with Patreon.com, right?
Yeah.
A monthly,
you get people to build up your
pay you to
make art.
make art for them.
Yeah.
And I know some people that are making, they're not becoming millionaires, but
they're surviving.
They're surviving, and they don't have to take that second job.
Yep.
And they can spend 100% just doing this, what they want to do, what they dreamed of doing, and go on. And even if that takes you to your retirement years, and you've kept your community,
That's all you need.
that's all you need.
You got to keep a roof over your head and do what you love to do. I think that's something that's so valuable. Thank you so much for coming on the show and taking the time to chat with me.
Oh, thanks. This is great.
Where can people find you on the internet?
Just go to all the social networks. Most of my stuff is just Whilce Portacio.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming on the show.
All right, cool. Thanks, man.